Hi everyone, my name's Declan McGlynn and today we are joined by a production duo who've released on the likes of Crosstown Rebels and Hot Creations. We're going to take a look at their new track 1231 now on Future Boogie. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
nice
pleasure.
To the studios.
So before we dive into Ableton and talk about your productions, I mean, how did you guys start working together?
We met maybe
15 years ago, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, in a record shop. We knew each other, but we were just because we used to work for different clubs, like promoting and helping out, and we used to go down and basically one of the people behind the counter, he'd kind of serve as similar kind of records, and one day he was like, well, I'll just pull you two out a pile because we were in at the same time, and you can kind of sieve between your tails and see which ones you like, and we liked the same stuff, and then we just kind of got kind of pally after that, and I moved back up north. Bonner came up to university in Leeds, and we decided to kind of play a back-to-back set, and which was about 12 years ago, and it was actually warming up for Express 2. So they had the 4 decks and 2 mixers set up.
Right.
So we kind of just thought, you know, we'd kind of play off that setup before them, and it just, it seemed to work, and just that was it, wasn't it?
So you were DJing originally?
Yeah. We were kind of the DJs really.
Yeah.
We got into it that way, didn't we?
Yeah, and then the production thing sort of rolled from there, just really naturally, just kind of having an interest in. It was actually from seeing, I'd always kind of harboured ideas of, you know, like I'd had a sampler from like the age of about 16, but it wasn't something that you could make full tracks, and you could use it to kind of DJ with and extra throw stuff over the top. But it was, I think it was seeing a guy called Gerald at a warehouse party in Manchester about, at least 12 years ago, something like that. We had one huge one before the warehouse project started, about 2-3 years before that. And he just turned up with a laptop, and he was able to, like, the pace was changing and everything. I was like, oh my God, what's that? And I used to work in a record shop at the time, and went back and asked my friend, and he was my friend Matt, and he was like, oh, that's probably Ableton. You should probably look into that. It'd be interesting to. And so it was only like version 1 or 2 at that time.
Right.
And so, kind of got into it from there, bought a copy of it, and like a MIDI keyboard, and, just the natural progression, you just get more and more absorbed into it, I guess.
And when you guys are making tracks, is someone more focused on composition or someone more mixing? I mean, how does it work in the studio?
It's kind of, we just sort of really bounce about ideas, come in with as much many different things and different sort of possibilities, and then I'll tend to sort of work the desk a bit more, so to speak. If obviously these days it's kind of like a Ableton push and lots of bits and bits of outboard surrounded by it. But that's kind of how it tends to set up, and then we just kind of swap around, sit in sort of the driving seat, so to speak, and then jump onto different keyboards, and it's just a nice little flow.
So it's very much a kind of jam session.
Yeah, definitely for the first parts of it, and then when you get down to it, we try and kind of keep it into 2 separate parts of the production, and then the kind of the mixing and engineering of it, to kind of, because they're kind of almost different sides of your brain in a way.
Exactly.
To be really analytical and really cold, and whereas the first beat you just don't want to be really open and just get every idea down and just run, and then come back and assess it.
I think that must help having 2 people, because when you are doing something quite scientific, you can get very caught up like focusing on like a 16-bar loop. It's not actually, and then you end up getting stuck, and it's like it helps you
and then talking yourself out of it.
Also, we've probably got slightly different ideas of where we're coming from as well, and it's we can really bounce off each other. It's got maybe comes to a bit of a I'm not sure, and then someone else can pick it up and go, what about this? And then that can trigger something else, and it's a nice kind of continuous chain or flow to get to the end result, I guess.
So this track, I mean, do you want to maybe just talk us through how it came about, how it started?
It's pretty much like a lot of our other stuff. We come and work in the studio for sort of concentrated periods of time, sort of 4 or 5 days. And we never have a same particular kick-off point, like it'll be through the drums or through a melody or through a sample or whatever. It can be anything that will trigger it off, but then we kind of work around it that way. So it's partly to keep ourselves interested, and so you're not kind of just feeling like you're on a conveyor belt just churning things out. It's actually coming from different points of inspiration. But with this, I think it was a case of we were using particularly, I think, the bass station, and just doing passes of different sort of riffs that would kind of had a bit of an acid sort of sound to them.
We've been experimenting quite a little with the kind of
Yeah, with that bass station.
Acid sounds as well, really.
Yeah.
And a couple of other tracks as well, so it's kind of, I don't know, maybe it's part of a
sort of theme we've been kind
it.
of exploring for I guess for a year or so.
And that would just be a case of just sending MIDI from live into the bass
Yeah,
station.
so like in the
back
studio, yeah, exactly. We've got like a push, and then we send everything out to sort of MIDI hardware, and we do use plugins as well, as you'll see. But it's just a real combination of both, just to kind of get whatever sound we want, or that we're thinking of.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe we could just listen to the first minute or so, and then.
Yeah, sure.
So do you tend to use MIDI when you're making drums, or is it loops?
Yeah, it's a mixture of both, really. The things tend to be like kicks, snares, claps, stuff like that. It actually really changes all the time, and then sometimes we use, and then for hi-hats and stuff, and other things will be loops, but it's never the same thing twice, like sometimes it can be.
We've got our own patches of drums that we've made up that we can kind of go to. But actually on this one,
we've actually used loads of like stock kit and a couple of things that are a couple of really small basic patches. So some we have that are really complex, where they're like samplers inside each drum rack in Ableton, and so you can scroll through like hundreds of different sounds and kind of build up a jam that way. But this is just literally where we've just got like 808s, 909s, and sort of classic sort of sounded samples, and kind of layered up those rather. So like I say, it changes kind of every time we approach it.
And in this case, the kick was just a sample from your own library.
Yeah, it's like a kick we've used. Yeah, it's something with sound, and you can kind of retune it, but we're also using on it, which I think some people will probably be horrified at. But
classic.
Yeah, the
waves.
R bass mono, just to give like a bit of extra low end thump to the kick, really.
Yeah, and speaking of low end, I mean, you can hear the bass line coming in here, so you've got kick in the bass line, and later on, there's more sub elements that come through. I mean, how do you go about balancing those in the mix?
It's just trial and error, really, because we're not
trying to look for those pockets of space, basically, in between.
Just trust in your ears until and that's where it's good to have two of you, because you go, oh no, I think that's really not, that's still kind of clashing with each other, because we're not trained engineers, and we don't have kind of any good real understanding of physics, so it's just literally using EQs to just separate parts and go, right, what's the most important bit of that sound that you want to use? Right, okay, well, let's kind of sculpt around that bit, and then leave space for this bit, because that's the more relevant part of that sound, and so they kind of all end up sitting together.
I think basically we just got carried away with the bass station.
Yeah, got a bit. Yeah, and then we're like, no, we can't leave that out. Yeah.
It just seemed to all work, didn't it? We used 3 or 4 kind of channels using that. It just seemed to really flow together.
Yeah.
And as the more acid, squelchy bass line comes in, can you just solo that so we can?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so there's the main. So this, as you can see, so it's just cut out now. I'll skip through to another part. It's just basically, as you can see, they're kind of chopped up comps of a much longer take that ran for like 8 or 10 minutes. Yeah. And we just have it, signaled on a loop with sort of all the drums flying, and then just tweak everything live. And then go back and chop it up and edit it. Because sometimes it's just more fun than kind of, doing all the automation on a computer. You get more of a feel.
Is that a direct feed from the bass station? Is it going through something else?
Yeah, no, we do with other things. We sometimes put it through. We've got like a DBX and like an LS. They're nothing like really flash. I haven't got any kind of really expensive EQs, and we've got a really nice set of Focusrite pre's that we use sometimes, but more for really vocals and stuff. But yeah, the bass station, it sounds really, really, really good. So it goes pretty much straight in through the patch bend, straight back into the computer.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's it. As you can see there, there's just literally a little bit of the filter is there purely for being automated in certain parts, just to lift out. And then there's just kind of a permanent EQ where we don't really want a huge amount of bass out of it. It's just more about the aggression, the aggressive, squelchy quality to the sound there, and then using the bass. That's just really kind of the low end from something else, as you can see. I mean, that doesn't really have a huge amount to it anyway, at the front end. but we've just taken a tiny amount off there. It's just to just kind of good practice, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
And then again, these are then two different kinds of plugins, basically, that I think we've just kind of modified from Ableton presets, to be honest. We've just kind of tweaked them ever so slightly. It's just kind of like a bit like a DX. It's a like an FM synthesis bass line, and then they've got slightly different glide times on different ones, and that's they're just there in small parts. But yeah, I mean that's, and then again we're talking about passes with the bass station later on in the track. There's kind of different versions of that here that change, where we'd use the same MIDI as was used in the main part, but it's a different sound we've kind of shaped. We like that, and I thought, oh, well, instead of just excluding it and choosing one, we'll kind of find ways to thread them all together.
Yeah. And that 303, is that a real 303?
No, again, that's the bass station just tweaked.
Oh, okay.
It's a different
bass station power horse.
Yeah, basically, yeah. We kind of like to use one thing and rinse it, basically, until they're kind of, right, well, we're done with that, let's move on to something else.
I guess that's kind of a great way to work, though, because instead of just, when you have plugins, it's kind of an endless choice, and you're like, okay, now I want a CS80 sound, now I want a Moog sound, now I want this, now I want that.
Yeah,
when you just have one synth and you're sticking yourself to it, you force it to work for you.
Absolutely. I couldn't recommend that.
But you put more of yourself into that bit of kit.
It's got such a wide range of kind of things it can do, actually, the bass station as well. It's a really good bit of kit.
Yeah, definitely.
And in terms of arrangement, I mean, this track is called 12:32, but it's not 12:32 minutes. It's 12:01.
Yeah, it's now 12. If you buy it, don't think you've been sold short.
Yes,
it is meant to be 12:01.
I can't get any money back.
Yeah,
go and speak to Future Boogie if you want your money back on that.
The reason being that we made a final edit to it, and then we decided we were going to call it 12:01 or something, or 12:02, however long the track is now, and then a remix of it by Fort Remo got played by Beat Rates on Radio 1 almost like the week after, and
originally it was going to be 12:32.
So, that's what I'm saying, and then we edited it, that's what we're saying, and then we...
sorry.
And then it got played on radio, but then Beat Rates said it was called 12:32.
So then you're stuck.
And so we're kind of stuck with it because then it goes on, so we just kept it at 12:32.
So when you are doing a 12-minute or thereabouts track...
Yes.
How do you work with like arrangement? I mean, how do you keep it interesting and keep things evolving and changing?
I think this was just a case of we tend to stick to kind of doing things within a certain time frame, because you want to think you can get everything in there and you don't really want to kind of go on if it's unnecessary. But with this one, it actually felt like it could flow, couldn't it? We were just like, let's not give ourselves any restraints. Let's just see how it kind of pans out. And as we were working on it, we were just going, right, this can keep going. It's interesting. We've got all different elements, because as I say, we use the bass station so many times, but it was put differently throughout the track and keep it interesting. I think if you're interested, just keep going until you're happy with what you've got, the end result. And that's how it felt, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the case of using lots of layers of sounds on a particular theme just lent itself to kind of going on and kind of the flow of it, and the flow of it as well, because it's kind of a slow evolving sort of acid sort of
the acid line. I think you kind of transfixed in that as well.
Can wig on for quite a bit. So yeah,
and I guess there's a kind of very quiet vocal loop sample within this.
Yeah,
as well.
There's a couple of little.
And there's like a high string that comes in at one point as well.
Yeah, that's from. Sorry, it's just this. It's just from a thing called an MS6, a Cheetah. It's just like a rack unit. It's very similar to a Juno 106, but I think it's actually mono, which is really strange. But it's a 6-voice.
Right.
But it's really good for like high lines and streets. It's really good for loads of things, to be honest. It's got a really unique sort of sound to it, but it's not like huge and thick, but it's just good. It's really very 80s sounding.
Yeah, and I guess bringing in those like subtle elements keep the ear interested subconsciously. Yeah,
definitely. Just sort of the really delicate sort of highs here and there kind of really, add a bit of suspense to things. Just it's like, as a friend of mine always calls it, it's just like get a good infinity noise.
Yeah.
And let it run. Always adds a bit of suspense to anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the voice, I think, we might have actually frozen that. Yeah, I think this is actually like an old. So what we tend to do is build a bit of a stock of our own, you know, samples and our own sounds that we've recorded. So this is just literally us, you know, making noises into the mic from. It's probably about 10 years old or something now, that nearly. But it's just, as you can see, there is lots and lots of processing on it. So you've got glue, overdrive, a mutator, a spring reverb, a reverb, and so obviously we're starting to crash the very old laptop, and so we just bounced it all, you know, froze it all down. But you can hear that it's just, you know, a ridiculous amount of reverb and different kinds of sounds that have gone through to make it, you know, sound more than just someone going, ah.
Yeah.
You know, that you can kind of, which is always a good way, you know, to keep yourself interested, is just sometimes playing with adding on different plugins and you know, different processes or effects, you know, sending it out through something to get a
and I
different
guess
result.
is that something you do in other tracks too? It's like bringing your own samples,
yeah,
like
there's
give it
always
personality.
definitely there's always a few elements. I think so with this one, the drums, as we said, a lot of the sounds, well, in terms of the kick and the snare, are fairly stock.
Yeah.
But like there's also like as I said, we're talking about going through recycling sounds you've used before. I think some of these stick sounds that we've gone through, like we've always gathered like a really big bank of samples, like a couple of hard drives worth of, you know, different hits and things, and you just go through and find stuff that works.
Maybe we could listen to the drums soloed and then solo each individual bit so we can hear each layer.
Yeah, sure. So let's solo up the hi-hats. Let's go from. So basically, we've just got, as I said, that kick with the R bass on it, and then that again. Although these are the kind of full kits, we were just really using it to trigger like a snare and a clap there.
And that's just the Ableton kit.
Yeah, I think that's, it actually is just literally, as it says, 909 Classic. That's just one of their kind of, you know, from their drums. And then if we just mute the kick. So that's it, and then just like a little clav noise, I think. And then just building up, you know, both huge fans of Prince, so you can always have to have some kind of DMX or drum sounding thing in there somewhere, because it always seems to appeal to you. And then it's kind of an unusual, if I just solo the actual thing rather than the group, you can hear the. They're all kind of fairly different sounding, so they don't need a huge amount of EQ to they're not fighting with a lot of space with each other, but it's also a thing of just leveling it out, I think.
So yeah, by the looks of it, I think we've got like 4 types of snares going on, and they're all slightly out of time and laid over the top of each other, so we can give it like kind of a bit of a unique.
Yeah, it's to kind of build up one kind of
and kind of flams.
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly. And they're all sort of very different, as you hear. They're all kind of very different sounding sort of snares individually. So they all take up different space in the frequency spectrum, if you know what I mean. And then with the hi-hats, as I say, sometimes it's programmed, but with these, it's actually a case of just using sort of samples here in loops. But what I've tended to do here is, it's not exactly triple tracking, it's getting different sounds, 3 individual different hat patterns, and panning one super hard left, one, well not super hard, but fairly left, and the other one right. And they've got kind of different, they're kind of taking up different timings and different space, so they're not flamming or clashing with each other like with the snares slightly. And they're obviously a fair bit quieter. They're pulled down. If you sort of look on the mix, the left and the right are far more further down than, well actually no, the right is fairly far up as well. But it's just generally a louder signal coming through from the centre, and that's not really panned all that much.
So even though they're not like super shuffled, using 3 together creates a kind of...
Exactly, gives it that kind of, a lot more movement, a lot more dynamics, and a kind of sense of panning and a sense of width as well. So it's, just a different technique. Sometimes we don't use that at all. And as you say, it's just literally just more traditional way.
Yeah.
And then just to kind of roughen the sound up a bit, we've got a decapitator on, which is great for doing lots of different things. But here, it's kind of been used in a parallel compression sort of situation. So I've driven it relatively tough. I mean, I've done it on a couple of other things as well, on the snares actually. If you go back to those for a second, I'll show you. Here, it's, what's that sound? Yeah, there we go. So that's been driven a lot harder.
Yeah.
And again, it's just lit, but it's only like 10%. So you're just getting a little flavour of that really warm, aggressive sort of distortion.
Yeah, and it also, if you're using multiple samples, in this case 4 snares, driving them into the same type of compression or the same type of distortion circuit increases harmonics, which gels them together better.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a really good sort of gluing tool without being too aggressive. So yeah, that's kind of the drums really.
So Decapitator is one of your go-tos?
Yeah, it has become in the last couple of years, I think. Yeah, it's much more. It's kind of you can either use it really to completely change the sound, or just to give it that gentle sort of warmth and, like you say, cohesion to a bunch of sounds that you want. So it's a really useful tool. Without, I think a lot of plugins I've found that I've used that say they kind of have a analog distortion to them. That's the only one or maybe a couple of others that actually have kind of a nice warmth. It's quite hard to do analog distortion in digital. I mean, some people would still argue that isn't.
Yeah.
It's, you still really need the real thing. And I totally see what they're saying, but I think this is a good tool, basically.
Yeah, and on the master channel, I mean, we were kind of talking before about doing like a dirty master or doing your own version before it get mastered properly. I mean, is that something you've done here?
It is, definitely. So going through that, go back to the floor, just do the whole track up. Yeah, here we've got an excellent little tool by Brainworks Control. And that's to sort of, when you're playing in clubs that I use it before, it's purely, you've got a mono maker, so anything below about below 132 hertz is mono, so it kind of helps with the sort of solidarity of the track. And also when I take this off afterwards for the mastering engineer, but they'll do sort of a similar thing, because obviously when you're cutting to a vinyl lathe, to have bass in mono below a certain frequency, it just cuts a bit easier apparently. I don't know the full science of it. And then just just putting a little bit of extra width on top to certain things that have already been panned. And then this, how do you say it again?
Lufticus?
Yeah.
It's a point blank favourite.
This is actually from watching.
Up a lot,
from actually, I have to admit, from watching a point blank video. This is
there
where
you go.
I think it was
we would
recommended.
take commission, but it's free.
Yeah.
Even
and that was the thing, and I was like, well, it's free, right? I'll have to download it. I think, to be honest, I haven't really got a lot going on with this. It's just literally running the analog setting through it. That's it. I mean, but it tends to just give things a little bit of a lift, especially this 40K function is really, really nice. It's really subtle, and it just gives it a little bit of air to everything. It's really, really nice. And then just a really basic waves L2, really slamming the minus 6.5 dB is quite a lot, but yeah, it's just, as I say, just a rough master to kind of so it can be played out, and you can see the drop is huge.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind
is
of
the L2 the one you just use all the time, or do you try that differently?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if you want to kind of bounce down a mix and then run it through a limiter, then I tend to use the 316. That's quite good as well. But yeah, the L1, L2, they're good. The Brainworks BXXL is really, really good as well. Yeah, I've not used the isotope ones, but yeah, just something really simple, because it's only, as I say, it's only for us to play really. It's not something we'd send out to people. It's just a nice reference master for us to have, so we can kind of get a rough idea of what it'll sound like when it's been, given the special touch by a proper mastering engineer. Yeah.
And just to wrap up, I mean, what would be your advice for anyone who's in their bedroom studios now trying to make music for the clubs?
To make music for
clubs.
For clubs.
To get it sound as big as possible.
Less is more, even though this is kind of an argument about it goes totally flies in the face of that. But yeah, just concentrating on.
Maybe don't overcomplicate yourself either.
That's really
kind
it.
we've kind of always just stuck to what we know. We kind of, you know, we've got, like we've said before, not on this one particularly, but we've had if you've got particular drums, you know, got particular kicks, snares that work, maybe don't overcomplicate it. Keep to those things and then work around it. And you know, with this, we kind of work solely on the bass station. Now, if you've got other synths that you can maybe overcomplicate it, and it can kind of, if you've got a flow and you're working with one bit of kick, keep to that maybe. You know, don't overcomplicate it. And there's so much things out there that you can use, or you've probably got at your disposal, whether it's soft, you know, ware or hardware. But try and keep it simple, as Bonnie probably said. Less is probably more.
Yeah, totally. Just keep the idea fairly simple and its execution fairly simple, and it'll tend to usually, if it's a good idea, then it'll sound great, and if it doesn't, then you know pretty quickly that it's a bad idea and it's time to move on and do something else. So that would be our tip for club music, definitely.
So if you want to learn a lot more about mixing, mastering, music production, and all that good stuff, make sure you check out our courses at pointblankmusicschool.com.